When I think about climate justice, in my experience with this work, I also grew up in the 90s. Didn't necessarily, of course, like the reduce, reuse, recycle is something that's like burned into my brain. But I think one of the first things that I really identified as climate justice was Greenpeace and their like eco-terrorism efforts, right? And when I think some people hear climate justice, that might be what comes to mind for them. And I'm not here to say that any way of naming harm or identifying harm is wrong or bad. I will say that I'm not here sponsoring or like promoting eco-terrorism. When you think about the practices and values of restorative justice, as a way to move through the world, how does that intersect with the way that you think about having conversations about climate justice and pushing people who might not want to do things that are in the best interest of the planet to think a little bit differently?
Well, when I think of just connection and when I think of interacting with other people, right? People don't like to be told they're wrong, and people don't like to be critiqued in a way that makes them uncomfortable. And oftentimes, like, the stronger your tone and the stronger your stance, the more off-put people are, right? And so I've learned, because I can do that sometimes, like I'm very blunt. I'm known to be a person that often like speaks before I think. And I also can I've also been told that like I'm a bit like combative. And so it's something that I've always just kind of like thought on and reflected of like, how can I be more like welcoming in my message so that I have people who want to be on board, not because I've guilted them or shamed them into being on board. And so you have to meet people where they are. I think that's the big thing. And like understanding, with my connection and like my work and just trying to be an ABAR educator and like trying to implement more restorative practices in my classroom and things like that, like I've realized that, none of us are perfect, right? None of us are, like I don't want to guilt people into making them feel bad for the choices that they've made, right? And also understanding that people make different choices for different reasons and that they are in different circumstances. And so we have to be open-minded and we have to kind of see people where they are. And I think that's where I started. Like I kind of switched my language as like being an advocate and more being an educator. Like I want to give people knowledge for them to be able to make their own decisions. And I think also that we have to think about like our own sphere of influence. We can't control the choices that people make. What we can, though, is influence them to decide for themselves that they want to do something different. And so welcoming people into, this worldview of justice, everyone who is willing to participate in climate justice work, right? We need everyone to do that. And so if we're making people feel guilty or ashamed for the choices that they've made, or we are, telling people that the way that they're doing things isn't the right way to do things, then we risk putting people off from the movement altogether. And that's not what we want either. And also I think accepting that people are going to choose their own path, right? There are 8 billion people on the planet. And so that means that there are 8 billion different paths to climate justice, and people can kind of take in their own interpretation of what that means for them and take a path that works best for them in restoring their connection to nature, in restoring biodiversity on the planet, in restoring, equity and justice and, sovereignty to groups of people whose sovereignty has been stripped away.
Yeah. A couple things came up for me when you were talking at the beginning, right? Thinking about the body that you're in and the ways that the words like abrasive, harsh, like angry would be used when people hear words from you as a Black woman, right? And having to make the calculation for yourself for the sake of this message, like, maybe I'm not being abrasive, maybe I'm not being loud or angry, maybe this is just how people are receiving me. The choice to like soften in order to help people hear what you're trying to say to them. How do you navigate that versus if you can't hear me and if you can't take this from me, like, F you, you're the problem.
Right. I mean, it's definitely been a lot of self-reflection. Because I feel like I've had years of practice in kind of softening my message, right? Like, because it's not just, it's people who are close to me who have given me that feedback. It's not just, like, I've gotten the white tears from colleagues at work. I've gotten the label of being confrontational, and I've, been able to kind of decipher those different interactions. And so I have gotten to the point where, like, years of practice of kind of being more diplomatic and also being more open, I have been able to identify, like, oh no, it's not me, it's you, you're tripping. And so I do think, though, that it is a gray area, and it is very difficult to navigate as a Black woman in a field that is also, dominated by, white female majority. And so I think that, just like years of practice have kind of been able to help me understand, like, the nuance of those types of interactions. And I think I'm much better at being like, oh no, it's not me.
Yeah.